Well, I am so excited to have my special guest for this program today, Shanita Akintonde, the president of ShanitaSpeaks, LLC. Shanita, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to learn more about how you help make this world a better place. And let's get kicked off. Talk to me about ShanitaSpeaks and the people that you serve.
Well, thank you again for having me, Dean. And, depending on how much time we have, darling, I can tell you a whole was born by the river in a little tent story, but it sounds like you may want the abbreviated version for this conversation. I have been a speaker since I first learned how to spell my Bologna's first name. And that traces back to my time as a youngster when my late mother would tell me all the time, shh. And I didn't know that she was saying be quiet or she was saying shh as a preview to Shanita, my name. But regardless, it's been in my DNA since I was young. The only difference is I was a shy child. So although I had no problem talking amongst family and friends and my stuffed animals, it took me a little bit of time to get comfortable speaking in front of audiences.
That's hard to believe, but that's not an uncommon story, is it, for speakers, that many speakers consider themselves a little bit more shy, or at least have a shyer history, and maybe that gives them a unique perspective on people in the world. What's been your experience?
Well, I remember looking out at a sea of faces, and some were smiling at me, some were kind of scrunched up, and I was standing with my palms sweaty and my knees kind of knocked together. I was 11 years old. I was an eighth grader. I skipped a grade. It was called being double promoted in elementary school. So I was an 11-year-old eighth grader, and I was running for student council president. And I remember standing on a stage looking out at this sea of faces and preparing to give a speech. I had no idea when I ran for that role that I had to give a speech in front of the entire school, which was part of the requirements. And as I stood there, a wreck, I was 11 years old, and I resembled the number 11 because I was so skinny that if I dropped my arm down next to me, I probably looked like the number 11. But I proceeded to get up on that stage and deliver a speech. While it wasn't Shakespearean in nature, perhaps, or reminiscent of any of the great orators that we might equate good, eloquent speaking with, it lit a fire in me. And I was so excited when I walked off the stage. And I remember my eighth grade teacher, who was a bit of a tyrant, looked at me and said, "Did you write that speech?" And I said, "Yes." And she just shrugged and said, And I said, that must have meant it was a pretty good speech. Well, regardless of that, Dean, I did not win the election. I lost to Glenn. I think it was his Pac-Man theme beat out my Smurfs theme. Maybe that had something to do with it. But it wasn't because of my speech, I will tell you that, because I know I knocked that out of the park. And ever since that initial foray into the speaking world, I haven't looked back since. Nervousness was still there, but I had the confidence to do it anyway.
Well, you've always had a gift for the way with words, and certainly that comes out in how you carry messages to your audiences. So tell me a little bit about the journey from maybe, let's say, weekend speaker, or whatever you want to call it, into the world of professional speaking.
Yeah, so that journey was a little bit wavy. As most folks who are in our business will tell you, I wish I could say that I woke up like this. But what happened was a lot of work went into me becoming a professional speaker. Once I did that eighth grade foray and continued to speak and progress through high school and college, when I graduated from college, I joined this organization called Toastmasters at the behest of one of my professors in college who saw my gift for oration and told me that I should consider joining that group. I did. I started with that organization, segued as I continued to progress. I found out about another group called the National Speakers Association. I was introduced to that, the Illinois chapter, back when they had something called Candidate U, which is now called the Speakers Academy. I was in the inaugural class of Candidate U, and when I did that stint, it introduced me to this whole other level of speaking, and that you could get paid, Dean, for it. I said, oh my goodness, I didn't know that. And so I started putting a business plan together. I launched my first company back in about 1999. And when I did that, the intent was to parlay professional speaking into other aspects of advertising and marketing consulting that I was doing. And I did that for about 10 years, had clients that traveled. I traveled with around the country, speaking their best in college. And after that stint, I took a step back and I came back again in 2021 as rebranded ShanitaSpeaks LLC. And now my client base is a little different, although I still talk to young adults, but I talk to their bosses as well. And I tell them tips and tools on how to retain those college age students so that they will stay with their organizations through retirement as well.
Oh, it's very cool. So tell me a bit more about the clients that you work with and some of the reasons that they bring you in and maybe some of the challenges that they're experiencing.
Right. So my clients today actually is very interesting. I have a few threads that I followed with clients, some of which I've pursued myself. I mentioned earlier that I have a gift for talking to young people. That's a gift, I say, because they are brutally honest. If you ever want to get in front of a group of people who will tell you the truth about your content, do it in front of young folk. So I've had that opportunity to start my career with that demographic. But then what started to happen in the late 2000s, segueing into current day, is a lot of folks started reaching out to me. I think it was because a lot of the civil unrest that was happening in the country here in the United States, specifically in terms of Black Lives Matter and other organizational entities that were starting to say, hey, you got to pay attention to certain groups of people in more intentional ways. And a lot of companies and organizations, well, wanting to do it, weren't exactly sure how. And so enter Shanita Akintonde. I had the ability to speak the speak and talk the talk and walk the walk and all that jazz to organizations in terms of how they could communicate with employees to make them understand that they were there for them. And I also knew how to talk to people who look like me, whether they be women or people of color, and explain how they could best showcase their attributes and skills that they could contribute to the organizations. So what I found was it was a perfect dance for me to be the middle person between both the organizations and the employees. And so it's been working real well for me ever since that time.
That's awesome. What do you see as the biggest transformation that you bring to the engagements that you have with your clients? What's the change that you're hoping to see in the people that listen to your messages?
Well, I'm glad you used the word listen to ask that question, because my company, ShanitaSpeaks, has 3 tenets. I teach people how to lead better, how to listen better, and how to love better themselves and those that may appear to be different. And I want to amplify the word listen, because at the end of the day, what I found, Dean, is that most folks don't do that. And we as speakers often talk, but we don't always take a step back and listen. And so what I have found is when I encourage the employers to do focus groups, if they want to do it in a formal setting, or if they want to be informal and just have one-on-one conversations with their employees, which I highly encourage, that they are often walking away from those scenarios with that kind of, I hadn't thought about that type light bulb that goes off in their head, right? Because you can only assume or presume certain things, but it's not until you really sit down and talk to people that you get the true gist of what it is their meaning and what their intent is. And I like to say that proximity breeds tolerance. The more you're closer to someone, the closer you are to someone, should I say, the better you are able to understand them. So it's not a one-off. It can't just be one drop in the bucket. It has to be, sequential and intentional. And I think people appreciate that authenticity on both sides of the fence.
That's awesome. So, what if I'm a person, I'm listening to your story and the impact you're having from the stage, and I've thought to myself, boy, I'd like to get up on the stage, but I don't know how to get from where I'm at to up there. What guidance would you have for people that are curious about doing more speaking or getting paid to speak?
Sure. Well, tell them to call me. Y'all call Shanita Akintonde and I can help you. But in all seriousness, well, I was serious when I said that, but let me say, in addition to, I tell people this. It's not like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro to speak. And I don't mean that to be a discredit to those of us in the profession. I don't mean to insinuate it's not a lot of work. It doesn't take time. It doesn't take persistence. All of those ingredients are part and parcel to doing what we do. However, at the end of the day, it's about you and your unique story. I used to get upset when I heard someone talking about a topic similar to mine, Dean. Like, I talk about women's leadership a lot. That's another tenet of mine. And if I heard someone else saying that they talked about women's leadership, I'd say, how dare they say they're talking about women's leadership? That's my topic. But then I had to realize that the universe is wide and vast and far, and there's enough of it for all of us to have a place, because the way someone else talks about women's leadership is not going to be the way Shanita Akintonde talks about women's leadership. So guess what? Not only am I going to support you, you can't compete with me because I want you to win too. So once I let that go and realized it's not about competition, it's about collaboration, it was a very eye-opening and gratifying experience for me. And so I say that to say, for speakers, find someone who will pour into you. Not everyone's going to do it, because many still have the mindset of, it's mine and I'm not going to share with others. But when you find those like myself who are willing to not only give advice, I share things that I did incorrectly, so you don't have to go through what I did to find out the right way to do it. Get unofficial mentors, look up people online with social media. You can follow folk and really make it a plan of action as to what you want to do to be successful in this field. Take classes and do the work. And then I think you'll start to see doors open for you. Through organizations, of course, like NSA and NSA Illinois, I have found a plethora of people, places, and things that I could latch my hat onto, and it's been great.
Well, there's some definite gold in what you just shared there, and if somebody's a new speaker, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to what you just gave us for guidance, because it's so important for us to not only be encouraged, but also recognize that there is a pathway, right? There's a deliberateness. There's encouraging people not to compare themselves to Les Brown or Tony Robbins or somebody that's on a much different path and a much different point in their journey. But what's the next point forward in serving the people that I want to help, and how can I work on myself in that journey? And it's been a blessing for me to get to know people like you through communities like NSA. And what I heard you describing was really the spirit of CAVIT, as we call it in National Speaker Association, of how do we make the pie bigger? So we're not worried about who's got what piece of the pie, but let's make the pie bigger. And that is really, I think, the attraction that a lot of people have to this community. It's an amazing community. But also it helps us be better in how we're serving with that bigger pie mindset with our clients, the people that we want to leave better than when we found them.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you. What parting thoughts would you have? I guess I'll ask for two parting thoughts. One, for that group of people that you serve with your message and the clients that you have, and another for somebody that's maybe looking to move their speaking skills or business to the next level.
So thank you again, Dean. You're wonderful, and I appreciate you for opening this platform to us speakers in our chapter to share these kinds of important takeaways that I hope people are gleaning at least a little bit from. What I would say to clients is adapt what I'll call a tolerance for ambiguity. Don't get so comfortable that you are comfortable. You need to be a little uncomfortable. And by that, I mean, don't rest on your laurels to the point where if someone brings new ideas, new energy, doesn't look like who you think your past success or success plan looks like and what the folks who have been driving that look like, should always remain the same. And if you need any examples of that, look at what Blockbuster did when it came to Netflix. And now what, Netflix was also able to do when you had the HBOs and the Cinemaxes and all of those kind of cable networks who said nobody's going to stream a whole show in a day. Well, I'm guilty of that and have done it repeatedly. So when you think you own something, or you think, okay, we figured this out and I got it going and this is the way it should be, always keep in mind that there's always something else perhaps on the cusp that could come along and change it. So be open-minded and don't feel that everything has to be cookie cutter. And who you think is going to be the best solution for you may not be who you think it is. As far as the individuals who are on a path and not sure what direction to take to pursue their trajectory toward speaking, I'm going to say give yourself grace. Understand that anyone who is successful at anything has had some foibles, some stumbles, some mumbles, bumbles along the way, that's part of the journey. And the more you have it, and I know it sounds corny or you may not believe it, but the more you have it, that is so great for us as speakers because that becomes stories. Those are nuggets that you can then plug into your speeches. Nobody wants to hear from anybody who stands up and says, I am so perfect and everything has gone exactly as I planned. I mean, who cares about that? We want to hear from the people who are the Rockies of the world, who came back, right, and fought. And we saw Rocky work out. And then when he came back and fought the fight, we were like, go, Rocky. That's what we want to see. So be the Rocky. Don't be the rock star.
I love it. I love it. So some might call her Shanita, but today I'm with Shanita Akintonde. Shanita, if people want to follow or get connected with you, where would you direct them?
So I am on all social media platforms. I have a website, ShanitaSpeaks.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Professor Shanita Akintonde, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Shanita Speaks. Type that in and you will find yours truly.
Shanita, thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Dean. Bye, everyone.